Before we go on to the first regular season game, here are a few more stories from Paul Hornung concerning his first few weeks with Lombardi. Hornung wrote that most of the Packer players were scared of him regardless of how big they were, but he made nobody more nervous than Max McGee. Hornung, however, said he was never scared to stand up to him, no matter how many times he argued with his coach. He said, "I never won a single argument, although I know, and he knew, that I was right many times." Hornung doesn't specify when this occurred, but during training camp in the early years, Lombardi was watching game film when he received a call from his wife. He picked up and she said, "Happy anniversary." He was so focused on his job, he had forgotten all about it. This put him in a bad mood, and he decided to do a bed check, something he usually left up to his assistant coaches. Hornung and McGee heard him coming, so as a joke, they put their beds together and took off their clothes and embraced. Lombardi opened the door to see them holding each other. Hornung said, "Please, coach, would you close the door and leave us alone?" Lombardi was completely thrown off and backed out of the room and closed the door. Then he yelled, "What's going on in there? I'm coming in." This time, Hornung and McGee couldn't keep from laughing, and Lombardi realized he'd just been had. Lombardi said, "What am I going to do with you two?" That helped him to forget his foul mood. Hornung said that despite McGee's demeanor with Lombardi, he would be much more assertive when his coach wasn't around. This assertiveness came through when it came to pursuing women, which naturally didn't give Hornung much motivation to behave either. And getting back to breaking curfew, there was another incident where Hornung and McGee picked up two airline attendants when they ran into some of their assistant coaches who were out looking for them. This time they wouldn't be fined, although they had to part ways with the women. Now, let's go down to the start of the regular season. Monday, September 28th, 1959. In the first game, their offense got off to a tough start. However, the defense held, and running back Jimmy Taylor was able to help make a difference on the ground as the Packers came back to beat the Bears by a score of 9-6 in front of a home crowd of 32,150 fans. The game had a frustrating beginning for the Packers as 3 potential touchdowns were missed, and all of these were in the first quarter. First, on a halfback option play, Hornung passed the ball to a wide-open Luke Carpenter, but it was overthrown. Instead of being up 7-0, the Packers attempted a field goal, however Hornung missed. Second, Gary Knafleck broke free at the Bears' 20, however McCann's pass was too long. And third, on another play, Boyd Dowler had 5 yards of separation from J.C. Caroline, but he dropped a perfect pass for McCann at the Bears' 15. 3 potential touchdowns, and all of these in the first quarter. However, there is something to be said about the law of averages. Despite these turns of events translating to 0 points, if a young team is able to put up almost 21 in the first quarter, as frustrating as that is, it can be a good sign of things to come once the group gets more experience and the problems are ironed out. The offensive difficulties would continue in the second period. A 25-yard pass was completed to Max McGee, however a penalty wiped that out. A few moments later, McCann threw an interception to Bill George, killing that drive. The Bears were able to nail a 46-yarder out late in the second quarter to give them a 3-0 lead over the Packers. The Bears would go into halftime with this score. In the third, the Packers got inside the red zone. However, in a 19-yard field goal attempt that would have tied the game, Bart Starr, who was holding on the kick, fumbled the ball. On another drive, Max McGee had hauled in a 67-yard pass, however Hornung missed from the 14. Bobby Dillon and Dan Curry would then both drop interceptions. Then 48 seconds into the start of the fourth quarter, Avini kicked another field goal for the Bears, this one from 42 yards, to expand the lead over the Pack to 6-0. A little less than halfway through the fourth quarter, Chicago fumbled and the Packers recovered at the Bears' 26-yard line. On a 5-play drive consisting of alternating runs by Hornung and Taylor, Taylor broke through from 5 yards out to tie the game at 6-6, and the extra point put them ahead. The teams then traded punts, with Max McGee getting off a booming 61-yarder that rolled out of bounds at the Chicago 2-yard line. On first down, Bears quarterback Ed Brown went back for a pass, but was chased down by the Packers' pursuit. Brown fumbled as he was trying to lateral, and Dave Hanner was given credit for the safety, which took place with just 55 seconds left in the game. This was the same Hanner that had collapsed in practice weeks earlier and had to spend 2 days in the hospital, and now he was killing a Bears drive to keep Chicago from coming back. Naturally, the Bears tried an onside kick, but Ray Nitschke recovered, and the Packers ran out the clock. As time expired, fans in the stands counted down the final 14 seconds. Jim Ringo picked up the ball and gave it to Lombardi. "You deserve this more than anybody else." The Packers then picked up their coach and carried him off the field. And here we can see those two most important scoring plays of the game. For the final stats, Lamar McCann completed only 3 of 12 passes for 71 yards with no touchdowns and 1 interception. In the receiving game, the only really big passing play that was counted was McGee's reception. For the rushing game, this is where things would get better, as even though Horning's rushing average was only a little over 3 yards per carry, Jamie Taylor would pick up 98 yards and 22 attempts for a 4.5-yard average. The paper remarked that they could not remember a time when the Packers' defense looked this good against the Bears. Sacks were not officially counted during this time, so there is no information on that. However, Chicago was kept to under 100 yards passing and without a touchdown, and this was a team that had averaged 33 points a game during the preseason. Let me repeat, 33 points a game, and the Packers' D held them to 0 touchdowns. In the postgame, Lombardi said this: "It's just like I told you when I first came here. You have to have a defense to win in this game. Our defense did a tremendous job." He went on, "When the breaks went against us in the first half, they stayed right in there. With the offense," he said, "we need a lot more poise offensively. We have a tendency to get too emotional. That's all right defensively, but it's no good offensively." He continued, "We played a very emotional football game. Take Boyd Dowler, for example. In practice, he eats up passes like that long one he missed out there today. In terms of halftime adjustments, Lombardi revealed, I just talked to them. We didn't make any changes. We just did it better in the second half." He went on, "I don't know whether it was apparent from the stands or not, but we changed up on the line of scrimmage in almost every play. In fact, my hand changed up 3 times in one play, the one Taylor ran for the touchdown. McCann had pulled a muscle in his leg, and from the second quarter on, he couldn't pivot." Lombardi said, "I second-guessed myself about 20 times or whether I should have taken him out. Actually, though, he threw beautifully. He threw the ball very, very well. He called a beautiful game, just the way it was drawn up. He called every play." Lombardi also remarked on his pass protection. "Only 16 yards lost passing. Anytime anybody does that against the Bears, you're doing all right." The Packers had won the coin toss, but decided to kick off to open the game. "This was the first time I've kicked off in a game. That's a switch, but I wanted that wind in the fourth quarter." This decision seemed to have paid off, as with the wind at his back, Max McGee was able to get off that long punt in the fourth that placed the ball at the Bears' 2-yard line. Toward the end of the interview, Dr. Bill Omonski, a former Chicago Bears fullback, came by to congratulate Lombardi. Omonski said, "You really got a ball club there. I didn't recognize the team from last year. With the same personnel, it's a miracle." As Omonski was leaving, Jack Venisi pessimistically said, "The last 3 have been kind of close." Lombardi jokingly responded, "You don't think for 1 minute that any of them are going to be any different." And here we can see even more photos from the game, such as Bears head coach George Halas going up to Lombardi to congratulate him. Towards the left side, Lombardi is shown examining some Polaroid photos. In the middle, we see Gary Knafleck hauling in a 20-yard pass. On the right, we have Curly Lambeau arriving earlier in that day for the game, and at the bottom of the page, we can observe Bill Forster getting in the face of Brown. The post-game coverage continued. Defensive tackle Dave Hanner said, "It was a good one to win for the whole season. This game is going to mean a lot to us. Those Bears have a lot of personnel, more than most teams in the league, and the only way you can beat them is outthought them. Of course, the word meat was supposed to be beat. However, since that's how they showed it, I'm leaving that in. I do like the idea of meet 'em as being a type of late 1950s beatnik slang. In the locker room, McCann was resting his sore right leg with an ice pack. He said, "It's just a Charlie horse. I should be all right by Sunday. That sure is a nice one to get under the belt." In regard to Lombardi, McCann said, "After I got hurt, I checked with him and he told me to go ahead and play. When a man displays that kind of confidence in you, you'll do anything in your power to keep from letting him down." McCann called it a tremendous team effort, especially in defense. If they can keep that up and we can iron out a few of our mistakes, we're going to have a tough ball club. Chicago coach Hallis remarked, "The Packers are going to be a powerful factor in the Western Division race. You have to hand it to Vince Lombardi. He did a splendid job. He had a fine team out there, and the better team won. There's no question about it. The Packers have made a great transition under him." September 29th. Lombardi warned his team not to get too far ahead of themselves as they were still rebuilding. Their next game would be at home on October 4th against the Detroit Lions. Detroit had won the 1957 NFL Championship. However, they had fallen from grace in 1958, posting a 4-7-1 record, so they too were looking to rebound. Lombardi addressed his team on Monday. "Remember, this is still a rebuilding year, and one game doesn't make the season." He added, "Champions aren't built overnight." As an aside, in their next game, the Packers would be playing against their former coach, Scooter McLean, who had taken an assistant job with the Lions. Although there were 25 Packers players returning from 1958, due to the big culture change in Green Bay, I'm not really sure, though, how much useful insider information McLean could have given his new team. September 30th. Since Green Bay traded quarterback Tobin Rote to Detroit in 1957, the Packers had been unable to beat their former quarterback. In that first year with the Lions, Rote, along with some help from Bobby Lane, beat the Packers 24-14 and then 18-6. In 1958, they had a 13-13 tie before beating the Packers again 24-14. The Packers fans were excited, but this excitement perhaps needed to be tempered a bit. On Tuesday morning, the teams reviewed pictures of their win against the Bears, and then they proceeded with a workout where Lombardi put an emphasis on passing, as they had only completed 4 in 14 attempts, and at least 3 of those incompletions had been drops. It was noted that Ron Kramer, who had set out the first game, might be getting some playing time against the Lions. October 1st. Billy Butler was placed on the roster, replacing Timmy Brown, who was put on waivers. Butler was used mostly on defense during training camp, but now he would be used on offense for receiving punts and kickoffs. It was noted that Butler and Dave Hanner had recently become fathers. Emphasizing just how long ago this was, it was mentioned that Hanner and his wife were thinking of naming their child Michael, even though he had already been born. This wasn't that unusual for that time period, as the gender of children before birth could not be determined. And the game against the Lions was already sold out as the hype of this new Packers team continued. October 2nd. The Lions' rushing attack was highlighted, and it was said they could perhaps give the Packers defense some trouble. The Lions and the Packers also had similar preseason records, with the Packers going 4-2 and the Lions going 4-2-1, although I wasn't able to find information on what extra exhibition match the Lions played. October 3rd. The day before the match, the Packers and the Lions game was rated as a toss-up. McCann was named the starter. October 5th. The Packers topped the Lions 28-10, however the match was a lot closer than it would first appear. In the first quarter, McCann completed a 12-yard pass to Gary Knafleck to put the Packers up 7-0. Then, still in the first, and starting at their own 16-yard line, the Packers underwent an 84-yard touchdown drive. McElhinney gained 5 yards around the left tackle. He then gained 0 at the left end. Jimmy Taylor picked up 5 yards at the same spot to give Green Bay a first down. Horning then went 22 yards around the right end to move the chains again. McCann then threw a long bump to McGee that took the Pack to the 5-yard line. McElhinney gained 0 yards at the right tackle, and then Horning tried the same side and picked up 1 yard. On 3rd and goal at the 4, McCann threw to Don McElhinney for a 4-yard score. The Lions, however, staged a comeback starting in the second quarter with a 1-yard touchdown to pull close. In the third quarter, Lions kicker Jim Martin would nail a 50-yarder. Then the Lions got the ball back, and with the momentum, things were starting to look bad for Green Bay. However, early in the fourth quarter, Jesse Whittington recovered the Lions' fumble, which turned the tide of the game. McCann would light up the final period, completing a 41-yard touchdown pass to Max McGee. They would then connect again and another long touchdown to put the game away. Lamar McCann would finish with these stats: 7 out of 16 for 146 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. With the receivers, Max McGee was a standout, catching 2 of McCann's touchdowns. He finished with 3 receptions for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the ground, the Packers would finish as a team with 113 yards rushing and 33 attempts for an average of under 4 yards per rush. While not a great stat, they continued to pound the ball, with Don McElhenney having the best stat line with 6 carries for 52 yards. However, most of those 52 yards came on a 46-yard dash, but he also added that 1 touchdown and the 4-yard reception. The Lions were able to have success in the passing game, except when it came time to actual scoring. Tobin Rote, the former Packer, was able to move the ball through the air. However, he had 0 touchdowns compared to 3 interceptions. Part of this was due to the Packers' pass rush, which caused Detroit to lose 60 yards through sacks, and combined with 3 picks, they kept the Lions at bay. After the game, Lombardi said, "Jesse Whittington's recovery at that fumble early in the fourth quarter was a turning point, no question about it. We scored right after that and took that 21-10 lead. That really made it for us." The Lions contested the validity of that fumble by stating they believed the runner's knee was down. However, they would have to look at the post-game photos. Lombardi continued, "We found the answer to one thing we were undecided about. I didn't think we had the capability of striking long, and we did it 3 times today." He then turned his attention to the other side of the ball. The thing that kept us in the game was the defense. If you trace the history of the National Football League, you'll find that most of the time the 2 teams in the championship game each year are the league's 2 best defensive teams. He addressed the Lions' defense. They had the best 4 frontmen I've seen around in Glass, McCord, Maines, and Karras. They're very agile, very strong. It's the first time, which covers 8 games, including our exhibition games, that we've been stopped running. In terms of quarterback Lamar McCann's play, Lombardi responded, "What else can I say but words of praise? He was great." He continued, "We got fooled a few times when they switched defenses on us, but things also worked out well at other times. It gets to be like a chess game." So the Packers, at 2-0, had their first winning streak since December 2nd of 1956. That's right. 2 years and 306 days passed since the last time the Packers could have said they won 2 games in a row. October 6th. The paper previewed the upcoming match between the Packers and the undefeated San Francisco 49ers. It would once again be another home game from Green Bay, and even though it's just 3 weeks into the season, the winner would be the last unbeaten team in the entire NFL. Coming into that third match, the 49ers had given up just 14 points in 2 games, while the Packers yielded 16, which put the 2 at the top of the NFL. The 49ers had some pretty decent teams in the late 1950s, although due to the rules at the time, only 2 squads would normally make the playoffs, the winners of the Eastern and Western divisions. That would be unless a tie-breaking game was needed. It was under those conditions that the 49ers made the playoffs in 1957, only to lose to the Lions, who had a great come-from-behind victory. Aside from that lone game, this era of the team's history would be without any other playoff appearances. Despite just being 2 years removed from almost making the 1957 NFL championship game, expectations of San Francisco were not that high. In fact, when NFL Commissioner Burt Bell called to find out the score of the 49ers-Rams Week 2 game, and he was told that it was 34-0, Bell supposedly said, "The Rams are really cleaning up." He nearly fell out of his chair when he was told it was the other way around. I bring this up because despite the fact that people don't normally associate the 49ers of the late 1950s with excellence, they could be a deceptively tough opponent. The Packers were going to have their hands full. October 7th. More previews are given for the Packers-49ers game. After reviewing the film against the Bears, Lombardi said that Matt passed more against San Francisco. We were too conservative. The Lions used a 7-man line against us most of the time. Many times, all 7 rushed in. That made the running so tough. That's when we should have passed more. And it was said that Jimmy Taylor might miss the next game due to accidentally burning his foot. His wife was frying potatoes when the pan caught on fire. Taylor grabbed the pan, but grease spilled in his right foot and hand. And it's here where fact-checking can get uncomfortable. If you go by Paul Hornung's account, he said Jimmy Taylor told him this was actually the result of an argument where Taylor's wife intentionally burned him with the grease. None of these people are here to defend themselves, and it's also possible Hornung was not giving an accurate description of what happened, so I'm going to defer judgment. Okay, let's move on. On October 10th, Representative John Burns presented an American flag to Lombardi. Burns had seen a flag flying over City Stadium that had only 48 stars, so he had it taken down and presented Lombardi with one that had the proper number of 49. In case you're curious, the 50-star version of the U.S. flag would be unveiled on July 4th, 1960. October 10th. And while Lombardi was already a celebrity in Green Bay, not everyone knew who he was. The paper reported on an incident where he visited a clinic and the receptionist asked what his name was, and when he said it was Lombardi, she asked him how to spell it. So, even in a small town with not much going on, not every single person was keeping up. That's all for now. When we continue, we'll cover their duel against the 49ers. See you next time.